Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. The Killer Women Vodcast is pleased to be a part of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. To learn more about Danielle and her books, visit her at www.daniellegirard.com, and to access all of our vodcasts, go to youtube.com/Authors on the Air. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Woman Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Network. I am your host, Danielle Girard, and today's guest is Iris Johansen. Now, Iris is such a special guest for me personally, and I'm betting for a lot of authors and readers out there. Iris, your books inspired me to try to become a writer. So I remember reading the very first Eve Duncan book, The Face of Deception, as I was querying agents for my first novel. So I'm super happy to have you on the show. And before I let Iris say anything, I'm going to give you her actual incredibly talented bio. So Iris is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of more than 30 consecutive bestsellers. Her series featuring forensic sculptor Eve Duncan has sold over 20 million copies and counting, and was the subject of the acclaimed Lifetime movie, The Killing Game. Along with her son, Roy, Iris has co-authored the New York Times bestselling series featuring investigator Kendra Michaels. Iris lives near Atlanta, Georgia. Iris, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, it's a real pleasure. And you remembered the first Eve book. A lot of people don't even know that was the first Eve book.
I do remember it was, I remember being like, wow, this is somebody writing strong female characters with page-turning books. And I thought, this is exactly what I want to do. So, and speaking of Eve, I have this fabulous, which was out June 14th. This is the 28th Eve Duncan novel. So congratulations, 28.
Thank you. Isn't that a great cover?
It's a beautiful cover. I have to say, all of the covers are beautiful. And I think, I can't decide, is that Eve, do we think? Or it almost could be also...
it's Riley.
It's Riley. I think it could be
Yes.
Riley, right? She looks very, very tough. I love Riley. So, okay. So I can't believe it seems impossible that there is somebody out there who has not met Eve Duncan. But just in case, Iris, will you tell us a little bit about the series and about A Face to Die For?
Well, the series, of course, goes on forever. And it has gone forever with many, many characters in her family and her friends and her goddaughter. It's really not a series more than it is a sort of universe, because most of my readers know every one of those characters that are in these, because, sometimes I'll have Eve and she'll have a relatively small part. And then, of course, I'll have Eve and she'll have a gigantic part. But the thing is, they're a family. So that's right. That's what it should be.
Oh, it is wonderful. And the characters come back and weave in. And like you said, Eve's always there, but not always necessarily the center of the particular book. So can you remember how did Eve Duncan come to life? What was the first seed of that character for you?
Well, actually, she wasn't even supposed to be a series character. She was just, I just had been watching this wonderful show on television about forensic sculptors. And I thought, isn't that fascinating? Wonder if we could do something with that. Mm-hmm. Okay. And shortly after that, Eve was born. And she was not, as you probably noticed from that first book, she had a hell of a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And so I had to not only solve all of her problems, but try to get her on a road so that I'd be happy with the book itself. Because let's face it, she had a daughter that had died. She was suffering all over the place, and I had to do something about the book just to make me happy with it.
Right. To give her some relief from her grief and her past trauma. But in some ways, starting a character with so many levels of trouble is a great way to create a series character, right? Because then there's lots of room for her to have a happy future.
And I had no idea, because all I wanted, I'm a person who really likes a happy ending, all the way. So, and I had no real plan to make her a series character. So when I actually finished the book, I thought, okay, this works. She's strong. She's wonderful. She can go forward now and have a great life. And then I said, okay, I'm finished with it. Not to be.
So was it the editor's idea? They loved her so much they wanted you to do more Eve books?
No, I just got so many fan letters about them, and they didn't want Eve to just wander away somewhere. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my books, the characters do sort of wander away because I'm so eager to go on to the next one.
Right.
But in this case, I thought, well, no, I'm not gonna cheat. I did this. What I figured a complete great book for Eve Duncan, and that's it. And so I waited a while, and until I found a story that I thought that would really satisfy me and Eve Duncan. Mm-hmm. So that was the next story.
So she basically, it was a situation where the story came to mind for Eve. You were like, I'm not going to go back to Eve until you had the right story for her.
Right. Yeah. And if I didn't have the right story, she wasn't going to come back. You can't do that.
Well, and so I tried to find an actual count of Iris Johansen books. And I realized with the translations and everything, I couldn't quite figure out how many books you've published. Do you know the actual number? It's over 100 for sure.
It's over 100 for sure. And I don't even know. Actually, I've got some people on that have written me and said, I've got this all your counts. I've got everything you've ever done, and I admire them, but I can't keep track.
There's very few authors, I feel like, that will say that, Iris. Most of us know exactly how many pages, let alone books, we've written. So now also, so you were talking a little bit about a story idea. How does it start for you? Do you read about forensic sculpting, which is, of course, was and at that time when I first read about Eve Duncan, I had never heard of forensic sculpting, so it was so fabulous to read about that with Eve. But is it normally a sort of situation that comes as an idea, or how do you come up with sort of the seed for a story?
Well, from everywhere, from the guy next door, from something that you've seen on TV that just triggers something, and that's what it's always been for me. You take your plots and your plans and your characters from everything around you, and then you develop your own character, because that's absolutely essential. They have to be all your character.
Yeah, no borrowing the guy next door. You can borrow his situation, but not the man. So it sounds like, and I feel this from reading your books, that the characters are very important to you, that the individual sort of motivations and stories of your people, it's like your extended family. You have a very large family, Iris.
Yes, I do. Very large family. And as I said, the family is a doggone universe.
Yes.
They just go on. And as you've perhaps seen Riley Smith, who's a new member of the universe, and a really good friend to Eve these days, and will continue to be.
I was going to say, we're going to see more of her, I would imagine.
Oh, yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So how do you, this universe, I mean, I know you know these characters, obviously, the way that you know your family because they came from you. But how do you keep track of, all the details? I mean, are you keeping that all in your head, or do you have some, system that you refer to? If what is the town that Eve did something in? How do you keep? It seems like it's so much to keep track of. I'm so impressed.
Don't be impressed. You just go back and do your research again.
Yes, that's right. You go back and look at it. Well, a really good research assistant. Now, I read somewhere that your daughter helps you with research. Is that true?
Yes, she does.
That's wonderful.
And she's terrific. And she's got such a busy life of her own that whenever I tap her, I said, I just say, please, just forget about Annabelle well, maybe for the next year or so. It doesn't happen. Annabelle is never forgotten because she's our love bug.
Oh, I love that. So tell me also, you have 2 children. Roy, I know you've written with Roy. Do you have more than 2 children or the 2 children?
Just the 2.
So tell me, because, of course, I'm also, many of our listeners and myself included are also mothers. Your children, I assume, were they school age when you started writing? Or
actually, my first book that was published, they were in high school.
Oh, they were. Okay.
Yeah.
How did you? So you were writing when they were in school. How did you balance that? Because of course, I'm sure you were also primary caregiver and everything.
And worked for an airline.
Oh my! How did you do that?
How did I do it all?
Yes.
Well, you just do it all because your life is not just isolated into to one great mass. You've got a family. You've got you enjoy going to the play. You're trying to make everything go together, and at the same time, you're trying to make your characters in this doggone book do what they should be doing, and they're not doing it.
So, did you, when you were working and raising kids, did you sort of get up? Did you have a certain time of day that you worked, or how did you sort of structure your life?
Yeah, I'd get up and be at work by 5 o'clock in the morning. And I'd write a little bit on my yellow pad before I had to go into work. And then when I got home, I'd work on my breaks. I'd write on my little yellow pad.
So just all the time.
All the time, and at the same time, you've got a life, and you better enjoy it, or you're pretty sorry.
Exactly. So do you feel like do you feel like by writing sort of as often as you could find a little gap in time, the character and the story felt close? I sometimes wonder about, like, do you write every day? Do you try to touch the story as much as possible?
Yes, I write every day. And I start off in the morning, and I write as long as I can. And sometimes that's 8 hours. Sometimes it's 12 hours. Sometimes it's 6 hours because they just won't cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, okay, I'm putting you away for today, but tomorrow You're going to come and you're going to do it.
And do they, or do you find that the story they are the ones in charge and you have to follow them?
Well, they are the ones in charge. I'm sure that you found that too.
Yeah.
They're in charge, and you just do what they want you to do. And but if you apply yourself, if you go in and you sit down at that computer every single day, then it's all going to come together. And they're going to mind you, maybe.
Maybe, or maybe not, or you're going to mind them, right? God, it's so amazing. So you write every day, and the characters, you sit in that chair for that many hours. I think that's one of the things that, as younger writers or aspiring writers don't realize. A lot of the time it's sort of just staring at that screen and trying to figure out what those characters are going to do, right? Or do you find that you write and then you sort of keep the typing moving, and that's how you learn what the characters are going to do? Or is it a staring at the wall sort of thing?
No, it's not a staring at the walls. I sit at the computer and I start to write, and most of the time they tell me what to write.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very rare when they don't. And when that happens, then you have to think, am I doing the right thing here?
Mm-hmm.
Because as far as I'm concerned, the characters are the complete storytellers here. You do what they tell you to do all the time. And it's magic. And it's a world.
It is. It sounds like, and you still love it, clearly.
I still love it, clearly.
So what an incredible joy you have found. That's amazing. So I want to also talk about a little bit. So I do find that what's interesting to me is the way that you incorporate, and I noticed this especially when, of course, I just read A Face to Die For, which was fabulous, and a few things stood out to me. One is that I love that you incorporated sort of history and mythology, and the world borders. There's some aspects of it that are sort of, like you said, a little magical, right? We're dealing with a character, Helen of Troy, perhaps, right? So is that something that you sometimes look to? Do you find inspiration in history and mythology often?
All over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I love different type of stories. I write mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
Science fiction really appeals to me. And every now and then, something that I wouldn't have even thought I'd be interested in just says, okay, this can be exciting. All you have to do is just think about it. And if you think about it hard enough, it's going to come alive.
That's magical. So you're looking at everything in the world, everything you run into, as a potential story.
Absolutely.
That's so fabulous. That's so fabulous. I love that. Well, I did mention I'm not a big snake lover. So there is one scene.
Neither am I.
I suppose not a lot of us want to be in a cave and confronted with a snake, but I thought that was what an interesting, and I'm not spoiling anything by saying this, but what an interesting clue that this was a snake. And I had never heard of the many-banded steppe crate. I don't even know how to pronounce that. But it was a specific snake that was not necessarily, normally found in that area. It wasn't native to that place, and that was So I have to ask, like, well, how do these are such little magical clues to that something is not right. How did that come to you? How does these things come to you?
It just happens.
We're just back to them. It's just magic.
No, actually, I love magic, but oh, number one, magic is always founded on research, and if you've got just a little kernel, then you just go ahead and you do your research, and you do your research, and you keep on doing your research, and sometimes you find something different and interesting, and it's a thrill.
It is a thrill. It's a thrill, and it makes your readers cringe. It was very, very successful. So I sort of talked about this, but I feel like, I feel like, so many of us listeners are aspiring authors. And also, of course, for those of us who only have 15 books, not 100 and however many that we've lost count. So what do you think? If you were to say, the few things that are the most important for a writer, what would you say are the most important rules or guidelines if you want to be a writer for a lifetime the way you have?
You've got to love what you write. And you don't write because that the market dictates. If you do that, there's not going to be magic. There's just going to be, maybe a little money here and there, but it's not something that would make you sit down at that computer every single day and say, what new world can I open up today? What am I going to do with this character? And can I make this character special? And there it is.
You have to love it.
You have to love it.
So you make it, talking to you makes it seem like it's all magic. It's all love, it's all magic, which is incredible. But what's the hardest part, Iris? Surely there's some hard part.
Hard part? There's no hard part.
There's no hard part.
No, there's not. You do your job. You're not hard.
That's amazing.
That's a thrill. And
okay, we had a little blip on our Montana Wi-Fi, but Iris, you were saying that basically there is no hard part because this is the thing we love to do. And so you're a professional, you show up every day, ready to work.
Yes, you do. And if you're lucky, everything flows together. And it's pretty much of a thrill every day, even after all of those 100 and some odd books.
That's incredible. Iris, what an inspiration. What a love you have found. And I love writing, and I like to be reminded that it really is a joy and a gift to get to be able to do it. So I appreciate hearing that, because sometimes I want to complain about how hard it is,
Well, we all do. We all want to complain how hard it is. But then when you sit down the next day, it's exciting.
It's pretty wonderful when something happens that surprises you, right? Your characters surprise you.
Absolutely.
Every day.
You never expected to.
Yeah. Even after all these Eve Duncans, she still surprises you.
Yes, she does. Because, try the next book.
Okay. I love it. Okay. Well, since we're there, tell us, what is happening? What do we expect next? We have a number 29.
Absolutely.
That is wonderful. So are we expecting it out next summer?
It'll probably be next summer. Yeah. And I have a book called The Captive coming out in the fall.
I saw
September,
that.
I think.
I saw that. I cannot. So 2 books a year.
yeah, I mean, it's fun. And when you go and you sit down with those characters that are your friends and your family, uh, there's no chore to it, not really. You put in some pretty long hours sometimes, but
Right.
it's not a chore.
Right. I love it. I mean, that is really inspirational. That is a really wonderful thing to be reminded, because it isn't a chore of all the things we get to do. So tell me this. I know also that, of course, I read I read the first book that you wrote with Roy. So I have a son who's 20. I can't imagine wrangling him into a writer's chair. So how did that feel different? Did you work in the same room or send something back and forth?
Actually, we wanted to write together, but we couldn't find anything that we really wanted to write. So this one day, Roy came back from Chicago. He was having a trip up there, and he says, "I found what we can work with. That it would help. It would be you, and it would be me, and we could have a hell of a good time."
I love it.
And so I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Submarines." And I said, "What? I'm not Clancy." And he said, "No, we can make it work. We can make it work." Yeah, and we did. And that was the first one we wrote together, was called Silent Thunder. And it was great fun. And after that, we try to write at least one a year together, because it's just so much fun.
Right.
Because we feed each other, and we love each other, so that works too. And it's just and lately we've been writing the ones with Dr. Michael, and they're almost as popular as the e-books. Would you believe that?
It's incredible.
And we were able to, like I said, we sort of feed each other. I'll take like 2 chapters and I'll write them, and then I'll back him into a corner for when he has to pick it up. and then he has to go on with the story, and it can be really tough.
Right,
when you're writing with another writer.
Right, and that's Kendra Michaels, right? Kendra Michaels.
Yes.
I've read those, and she had a really interesting start, right? Wasn't she born blind?
Yeah, she was born blind, and she got an operation when she was 20, and she became. It was very hard for her to adjust, but she became. As far as it being a detective concerned, she would be able to see things that other people can't see, because she was blind for all those years, right. And she applied, and it was so that's still her ability, and yet she's growing with every single book.
Of course. What a fascinating premise, a character that had been born blind. Did you read about that somewhere, or that was just something you guys
that's just something we came up with?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like you said, I think it's an incredible, it's sort of like the way you started Eve. I mean, they have these challenges, right? They have human problems and human challenges, which is, I'm sure, why all your readers are so in love with them, right? We see, although none of us I mean, I'm speaking for myself, are as brave as Riley Smith or Eve Duncan or Kendra Michaels, but we see bits of ourselves in those characters. And so when they succeed and triumph, you know, we feel that. I'm sure you feel that, right? Where we're all winning from those.
Oh, absolutely. And Riley's been such a joy in the past couple of books for me. And she and Eve are such good friends now that I can see them, you know, sparking off each other for quite a while.
That's incredible. So can you tell us a little bit about Captive? Because I haven't gotten my hands on that one yet, but that's coming. You said this fall. You want me to look at the specific date that we're going to get
I think it's September.
Okay. And tell us, can you give us a little teaser about that one?
Oh, that one is that's hard to describe because it's almost like a dual story.
Okay.
Of the past and the present, and it's about these people who are captives in their own way, and yet they are able to overcome everything. And there's a wonderful scene towards the end. I'm not going to tell you about it.
We're going to all wonder which scene.
But we, I had such a wonderful time with not only getting these characters from the past. As a matter of fact, some of the characters that were in some of the ebooks appeared in this one.
I wondered about that. Yeah. Are we going to see some characters we know?
Right. Yeah. The Earl was in that one, and he's quite a character in more ways than one.
So that we have that to look forward to, and then the next one will be the next Eve book, or do we have
there's going to be a Kendra book in like March, and then the following that will be the one that's going to have all of the excitement of the not maybe of this one. It's completely different, but it's that will be Eve and Riley, and another character which is very, very unusual.
Okay, well, there's so much to look forward to.
In other words, I had fun.
Right. I love it. Well, okay, so I have to ask now, because we're talking about 3 books in the next year, which, you know, I mean, your pace is phenomenal. You're obviously a very hardworking woman, which is very impressive, and I love hearing that, because it reminds me that I could probably work a little harder. But also, do you write one book at a time, Iris, or are you working on multiple books at the same time?
One book at a time. I can't, if you're dealing with one world, you just stay in that world for a while, and then you finish it and say, hey, I'm happy. Now let's go to this other world.
Got it. Okay. So no, because you're spending 3 months, it sounds like, about 3 or not much longer than that, really immersed in one world, and then you move on to the next book.
That's right. Yeah. However, I don't pay attention to the time. I should pay more attention to the time.
It seems like whatever you're doing is working really well for you. I wouldn't worry too much. Well, that's incredible. I mean, I cannot thank you enough for being here. If you haven't read 100 of Iris Johansen's books, you have a lot of reading on your hands. So if you were to tell us, so let's imagine there's somebody out there. Again, it's hard to imagine, but if there's somebody out there who has not yet read your incredible library of books, Iris, where would you tell them to start today?
Well, a lot of the reviewers say, if you haven't read Eve to begin with, try a face.
Yeah.
Because they even the reviewers say it's a great place to start with Eve.
Absolutely. So start right now and move back. And as you said, it's interesting because you do an incredible job of not making us feel like if we missed a book, or or we didn't start at the beginning, or we don't remember every Eve Duncan book, you can read this book 100% as a standalone and not feel like you missed anything. But there are hints in there that, oh wow, there's an entire world of Eve history and and her family and her friends that you can go back to. So
absolutely,
somebody has their work cut out for them if they're starting at the beginning. Well, Iris, I'm so grateful for your time today. You are incredible and an inspiration, and thank you so much for being here.
Well, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
What a treat. Well, I am your host, Danielle Girard, and this has been Killer Women Podcast with the unbelievably talented and prolific Iris Johansen. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.